This compilation gathers 9 uploads from different platforms and users, each clip marked by its origin and the odd occurrence it records. What follows is a sequential account of footage, transcripts, and witness reactions presented in present tense, with minimal commentary and no definitive explanation. This clip comes from @Noel89, Home Security, Kitchen Cam, 11:42 p.m. The camera is fixed on the hallway that leads to the nursery. The frame holds the doorway like a small, dark mouth. On-screen text reads, "Baby monitor died, checked footage." A dog pad rustles beyond the threshold. The family dog, a broad-shouldered lab, is visible only by his muzzle as he noses the doorway and whines softly. The house is quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant highway. Noelle's voice, thin and clipped with sleep, narrates in short bursts. "I swear it's right there. Look." She points off camera. For 2 minutes, nothing obvious happens. The lamp in the nursery is a washed-out bulb, the cot empty and taut. Then, without a cut, the pram in the lower left of the frame tilts, slow, precise, its wheels catching the threshold and rolling forward as if someone behind were drawing a line on the floor. The dog freezes, hair lifting along his spine, and emits a single high whine. Noelle exhales, she says, "I didn't touch it," then whispers a prayer under her breath. The movement halts just before the pram clears the doorway. Then the door clicks shut on its own. There is no audible gust on the microphone, no shadow to explain the pull. Viewers online debate whether the camera angle hides a cord, whether the wheel was unlatched. Others point to the dog's reaction and the timing of Noelle's muffled prayer as evidence of something else. The frame returns to emptiness. The clip ends with Noelle centering the door and the infant monitor staticking out. From @Camila Care, security feed, Nursing Home Wing C, 03:15 a.m. The timestamp blinks across the lower right. The corridor is lit in sodium tones, long fluorescent hums audible beneath the hiss of the camera. Caregiver Camila walks into frame carrying a tray. Her uniform bears the home's logo and a name tag visible in close-up. She is speaking softly to a resident off-screen, the cadence of someone who knows nightly routines well. Cameras in these halls are fixed and unobtrusive. The footage has that flat, clinical quality that makes small movements seem larger. A therapy dog, a small terrier, pads into view and starts circling a room with the door slightly ajar. A threshold again, this time between rooms that are supposed to be closed at night. Camila pauses, sets the tray down, and peers through the crack. On the bed inside, sheets are smoothed, pillows aligned. The oxygen machine huffs a steady, rhythmical sigh. Then, faintly, there is singing, a single disembodied voice humming a hymn in a tone that does not match Camila's voice or the recorded ambient noise. She frowns, leans closer, and the dog lifts its muzzle as if sniffing the air, hackles visible in the flicker of the camera. Camila reaches for the door handle. As her fingers close around the metal, the rosary hanging from the bedpost trembles and slides 2 beads as if brushed by something light and cold. She murmurs, "Lord, watch over," this phrase captured on the time-stamped audio. A soft knock sounds from inside the room 3 times, deliberate and quick, then silence. Camila steps back, voice a whisper to herself, "Not tonight." The footage cuts to a wider shot as other staff arrive. Later reports attached to the upload say residents who stayed in that room experienced acute distress in the days after, hospitalized in some cases, but the uploader adds the caveat that correlation is not causation and that staffing shortages complicate any clear account. Viewers note the dog and the rosary. Skeptics suggest drafts or faulty mounts. Others call for the home's maintenance logs. This clip comes from @Urban Relics, Amateur Exploration, Interior of St. Augustine's, an abandoned cathedral on the outskirts, timestamped 7:09 p.m. The uploader stabilizer rocks slightly as the camera rises up a nave streaked with dust motes. Stained glass is clouded, shafts of last sunlight cutting pale columns across collapsed pews. 2 flashlights carve cones into the gloom.
A handheld mic captures breath and the scrape of sneakers. The group moves past a threshold marked by a flaking sanctuary rail. When they cross it, the acoustic changes, and the air itself seems to hold a faint metallic chime as if distant bells are struck. Someone jokes nervously about old wiring, but the sound persists, a slow, low organ note that appears to come from a balcony the camera cannot quite reach. The leader, a young man identified by the username on screen as MV, pans the lens upward and catches something pale on the balcony, a figure like a child in a choir robe, unnaturally still. The camera jerks as a gust, unfelt by the handheld mic, rakes papers on the altar. The group's whispers spike. One of them calls, "Hello?" into the hollow. The figure tilts its head in a way that is both human and wrong. And a second later, a choir of faint voices, layered and overlapping, threads through the audio track at a pitch beyond comfortable range. A shadow passes across the face of the child. The beam of the flashlight catches a reflected coin or medallion, and for an instant the lens flares with a small vertical streak of light. The group flees down the nave. The camera, left momentarily, skitters on the pew and captures the balcony in a long, shaking shot. Alone now, the space exhales, and the distant chime repeats once, precisely. On the upload page, a commenter notes previous visitors claiming to hear organ music, though no instrument remains intact. Others point out that acoustics in vaulted spaces can create strange resonances. The uploader tags the clip as paranormal
With a question mark? From @NightShiftGreg, Retail Security, 24-hour convenience store, recorded at 2:07 a.m. The footage is grainy and in monochrome. The entrance doors form a literal threshold to the parking lot, and the automatic sensors occasionally blink on the frame's edge. A janitor pushes a cart past the snack aisle while a lone clerk refills the refrigerated case. The store dog, a collie mix usually asleep behind the counter, has stood up and is fixated on the front glass. The animal emits a low, repetitive whimper. The overhead speakers, otherwise dead, crackle and for a moment play a child's laugh looped 3 times, tinny and distant. No shopper appears outside, the automatic door is closed. A rack of cereal shifts slightly on its base as if nudged. Then a shopping cart near the automatic entrance rolls a few inches with no visible touch. Greg's voice, low and incredulous, comes through on the mic. Did someone come in? He steps into frame and taps the cart. The wheels squeak in a way that sounds normal, but the cart then lurches forward on its own and clanks against the glass. The clerk reaches for the radio, voice tightening. "Security, check the lot." On playback, an unusual low-frequency thump coincides with the cart's movement, a subsonic pulse that some users suggest could be a malfunctioning compressor. Others cite the dog's posture and Greg's reaction as evidence of something unexplainable. The uploader leaves the footage with no conclusion, only the timestamp and a caption. Door never opened. Anyone else? Comments flood with hypotheses and a few reports of similar sensor anomalies across other regional stores. A thin thread ties these first 4 uploads, thresholds and animals that register absence as if something crosses them. Each clip moves from mundane to uncanny with a small, precise gesture, a pram, a rosary, a distant bell, a rolling cart, that refuses easy resolution. The next clip in the sequence echoes this pattern, but shifts setting from public to domestic and from the passive sensor of an animal to the active camera of a child's tablet, where what is recorded is less a movement than a presence that occupies the frame like a stain. The tablet's camera sits low on a plastic tray, the angle habitual to any 4-year-old, floorboard grain, a scattering of blocks, the edge of a booster seat. The recording begins with a voice small and uninflected, a child's narration of shapes, circle, truck, moon, while a parent off-screen answers in clipped, domestic tones. The frame is ordinary until a patch of dimness gathers in the lower right corner, like spilled ink. At first, the stain is nothing more than an uneven shadow. The child points at it with a sticky finger and names it Penny, and the name is the only thing on the clip's on-screen caption. As the minutes pass, the stain does not drift across the floor, but instead seems to deepen in place. The camera's auto-exposure hunts tiny fluctuations in gain, so the stain's black becomes a black of a different quality, not the absence of light, but an absence of texture. The child's voice carries on, play-acting a conversation with Penny. The soft cadence is at odds with the stillness in the corner. Twice the parent enters the frame to pick up a toy. Both times they glance toward the stain without registering it, fingers brushing hair, the domestic script unchanged. On playback, the audio harbors a subsonic undertone, the same slow organ note others have described. It sits below the child's voice like a dental hum, felt more than heard. At 2:14 into the clip, the child places a coin on the floor near the stain, a bright gloss of copper. The camera quivers when the coin touches the wood, then the coin is drawn toward the stain as if attracted. It does not fall, it slides with a tiny, obedient glide until its edge vanishes beneath the dark. When light from the window strikes the spot where the coin lies, the lens flares, an almost vertical streak of washed white, faint and familiar. And for the briefest frame, the coin's face is visible, a small embossed figure surrounded by a wreath. The shape is the same as what flashed from the choir robe's medallion in the church footage. Someone in the thread posts a freeze frame with arrows, and within an hour a handful of users have layered the two images, circling the identical emblem. The comments under the child's clip fracture into the same kinds of voices, rationalists suggesting lens aberration or compression artifacts, parents warning about mold, and a small coalition of users who have been tracking the uploads and who begin to stitch connections aloud. Thresholds, one writes, coins, children, animals. Another posts a map, crude and annotated, marking the clip's geotags, where available, and the times. The clusterings are messy, not a neat line, but a scatter that rings a single county and spills into neighboring towns. A username that appears repeatedly, MV, is the only person to push beyond suspicion into pattern. Look at the medallion in the church balcony, MV types. Look at the coin here. The organ note is the same freak across footage. These aren't random. Someone else, at Old House Antiquarian, links to a 19th century photograph of a child's funeral procession in which a boy clutches a coin beneath a rosary. The photo is grainy and its provenance shaky, but it has the wreathed emblem on the coin. A new thread sprouts, family photographs that show the same small circular motif, on lockets, on the buttons of a faded choir robe. Each post draws in more users until several dozen are actively cross-referencing, overlaying screenshots, tracing the emblem with cheap graphics tools until red circles and arrows crowd the comment feed. At the center of that gathering sits Lena, WHO, who is Lena, stripped down to a single capitalized handle on the site.
She is not a coder or a ghost hunter. She runs a small channel cataloging oddities, a quiet aggregator who edits clips, writes short captions, and refuses sensationalism. She has been awake since the grocery store footage was uploaded, and now, alone in her cramped apartment, she opens the child's clip in a new window and toggles the waveform. The hum registers as a near-flat line with a low spike every 20 seconds. She zooms and hears it as something like a struck metal. Her jaw tightens when she compares waveforms, 3 separate clips, separate uploaders, different devices, and finds the same spike pattern. She pulls up the choir footage, slows it to frame by frame. At the instant the medallion flares, the audio shows the identical low impulse. Her finger taps a note into the keyboard. The cheap speakers in her monitor cough and then approximate the pitch. The sound washes through the room, and the hairs along her forearm lift. Her old rescue mutt, an ex-stray named Cooper, lifts his head from the rug and stares toward the window. His body becomes a taut string. Lena rewinds. In a frame she had scrolled past before, there was a child's profile in the stain. Not a full face, but the curve of a brow, the slope of a small nose, a mouth parted as if to speak. The exposure is wrong, the contrast impossible, yet when she blinks, the face remains. caught like a watermark. She writes in the thread with hands slightly trembling. Same medallion, same pulse. Anyone else see a face at 0:57? Replies race in. Some deny, some say yes. A user with a handle that matches the clerk from Greg's Convenience uploads a grainy still of the cart's coin slot where, if one zooms close enough, the wreath motif sits under filth. Another commenter claims knowing an old parish registry where children were baptized with a small coin tied to their ankle, an ancient charm for safe passage. The provenance is anecdotal, but the image of coins near bodies clicks into place with the other footage. The coin drawn into the stain, the medallion catching the light, the child's face submerged in darkness. Outside Lena's window, somewhere in the building, a pipe thunks, an ordinary house sound. Cooper growls low and then begins to whine, the pitch of his cry threading through the apartment like a wind. Lena leans forward, fingers hovering over the keyboard, and the organ-like note rises in the speakers again, warmer now, almost like recorded bells. For a moment she thinks of turning off her monitors and the phone and walking away, but the thread is moving faster than she can, and someone has just posted a county coroner's index scraped from a genealogy site with a set of dates clustered a generation ago. Missing children, unexplained deaths, reburials. The dates overlap the locations on the map. Lena opens a new document to list coincidences, to make clean lines where the internet insists on pattern.
She types thresholds, coins, children, animals, organ note, and then, on impulse, clicks on a folder she has kept since the church upload. Raw files, screen grabs, the shaky balcony shot. She plays them together, church, store, tablet, each on its own window, audio layered. The hum converges into a single, precise, almost mechanical tone. On screen, the stain in the child's clip pulses in time. She pauses the playback at one frame where three things align: a reflected streak from a medallion, the child's blurred profile, and, in the far background through a living room doorway, a shadow that is not cast by anything visible. The shadow's edge is clean and circular, like the outline of a coin. Lena's screen light catches the metal ring on her own finger. She has the sudden, absurd certainty that the emblem is less ornament and more signpost. There is a soft chime at her building's front door, an ordinary sound for a visitor's buzzer, and then, impossibly, the same low metallic note again, as if a distant bell had struck something far below. Cooper snarls and strides to the window, and Lena, breath shallow, reaches for her keys, though she will not go anywhere. Her cursor hovers over the upload button in her draft post. Compile, timestamp, overlay, publish. She hesitates, then hits send. The compilation goes live with a single caption: "They cross thresholds." The viewer count creeps upward in real time. A new comment appears 2 minutes later, from a user with no history and no avatar. One line: "Do not open your door." The buzzer buzzes once more. The organ note, recorded and resonant in her headphones, flickers, and for a beat there is something beneath it. The whisper of pages turning, a child's voice saying a name that is, impossibly, Lena's middle name. She does not remember leaving the chair, only the cold of the hallway air when she stands, and the scrape of Cooper's nails on linoleum as he follows, both of them drawn to the threshold in the same direction the videos insist on following.